let's take a look at virtualization. What is virtualization? Before we get into explaining the concept of virtualization, let's take a look and understand of how physical system configuration works. So, in a regular world, as you could see, there is a physical server. A physical server could be like a Dell or HP or any of those manufacturers that build a physical server. On that physical server, what do you do when you get that physical server? You actually install an operating system on top of it. And that operating system could be Windows, could be Linux, or any of the operating system of your choice, right? So once you have your operating system up and running, then the next step is that you go in and install your applications. Of course, without an application, you really don't need a computer. Examples of applications such as Excel, Word, DNS, Apache, NTP, or other corporate level applications such as database, SAP, ERP, and many other applications. Now, there is a problem with this. Suppose you have a physical server with the resources of 16 gig of RAM and 4 CPUs. Then you go in and install the operating system of your choice. And these are the resources 16 gig and 4 CPU, of course, are given to your entire operating system. But your operating system only needs 4 gig of RAM and 1 CPU, for example. That leaves us 12 gig of RAM and 3 CPU. So now, of course, we have the operating system ready. The next step is to go in and install and configure the application. That application that we are running, for example, requires another 4 gig of RAM and 1 CPU. Now, with having our remaining resources of 12 gig of RAM and 3 CPU, what do we have left with? We have left with 8 gig of RAM and 2 CPU remaining. And that 8 gig and 2 CPUs, they are underutilized. That is where the virtualization born. People sat down and they thought there gotta be a better way to save those resources and fully utilize those resources. We could run multiple applications, we could run multiple operating system on a same physical server. So we don't even have to buy more physical server. We don't have to buy more real estate to rack and stack those physical servers. We could just buy one beefy server, run multiple operating systems on it, and then run multiple applications on it. So that's where the whole virtualization concept came. So now let's look at the virtualization. When virtualization came into being, then what happened? What happened was there's a physical server, same way, running Dell on HP, whoever the manufacturer is. Then you install a virtualization layer on top of it. A virtualization layer from anywhere, like from VMware, from Oracle Virtualization. Then you install operating systems on it. So you could install two, three, four, how many operating system you can, depending on the resources that you have on the physical system. And then on top of those operating systems, you have the application individually run on each of that operating system. Now, what's the advantage? Let's look at the advantage. That's a physical server. Again, going back to 16 gig of memory and 4 CPU, you install a virtualization layer which takes up all your memory and CPU. Perfect. Then that operating systems you have, then applications, each of that operating system application has 4 gig and 1 CPU. So each of that operating system has given all those resources. What happens then? All resources are fully utilized, not wasted. See how we could take the full advantage of all those resources? So again, one more thing. Remember those days when you have one physical server and one operating system, and then people came up with another idea of, you know what, split the disk in half and let's do dual boot. So one of the partition would run, let's say Linux, and one partition would run Windows. But the problem what was with that is you could run only one operating system at a time. In virtualization, this is the beauty of the virtualization. You don't have to have one operating system run at one given time. You could run both or three or four operating systems at all times, all at the same time. That's why the virtualization is so important and so beneficial. Again, in layman's term, virtualization is something is really not real, but it is actually real. It is utilizing the system resources and sharing those system resources among all the operating system that runs on that physical server.